Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. And before we get started on the main event, I thought that there were some developments on the test server that you may like to be aware of. Specifically, a couple of changes to the USS Wichita and HMS Vanguard, upcoming Tier 8 premium ships. First, the Wichita. The major issue with the Wichita is that it's had its reload on its 203mm guns dramatically buffed. In fact, now it basically has exactly the same DPS as the Baltimore. The reload is down from 15 to 10 seconds. Which kind of makes sense, because it has exactly the same guns and exactly the same turrets as the Baltimore. So that's a spot of good news for anybody hoping to get their hands on this particular Tier 8 premium American cruiser. The concealment is just as ridiculously overpowered as it was, I believe, in the first iteration, with, providing you have the relevant skills on the captain and the relevant equipment modules fitted, a surface detection range of 8.7 kilometers. And yes, that means you can still stealth radar in this ship, because the radar has a range of 8.49 kilometers. Not much of a window of opportunity, but it is there. That, of course, quickly brings us on to HMS Vanguard, Tier 8 premium British battleship, and there have been some changes here as well, and they are all mostly pretty good. The Citadel still sits above the water, and the deck is still 32mm. That hasn't changed. But there were some fairly big issues with the guns on this ship, and they have been addressed. More specifically, the hilariously bad 72 seconds that it used to take you to turn the turrets of this ship from one side to the other. That's now down to 45 seconds, which is still fairly bad, but, well, it's a buff. Also, the reload of the guns is at 2 seconds shaved off. They now reload in 28 seconds. So, 45 seconds. Still not great, but now at least we've got something that we can start to work with. So we're going to go ahead and assign some skill points, specifically the expert marksman skill on the ship's captain. That's going to give us an additional 0.5 degrees per second turret rotation. And if we take a look now, we'll see that we managed to get that turret rotation down to 38.3 seconds, which isn't that bad at all. There's more we can do, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and fit one of the turret mods, which is going to reduce the turret rotation by a further 15%, while at the same time increasing the reload by 5%. I'll plug in the concealment module there as well, so we can check out the concealment values right after this. And with that fitted, we now have a 34-second turret rotation, which is actually pretty good for a battleship, and the reload is still less than 30 seconds. Speaking of the concealment, with the various different skills and mods fitted, 11.1 kilometers surface detection. So that's not bad at all. There have also been a couple of other changes made to the Vanguard, and the most significant of those is to do with the awful accuracy of the guns. The Sigma rating has been buffed from 1.8 to 2.0, so she is likely to be quite accurate. And also the armor-piercing shells have had the fuse times reduced to 0.015 seconds. Now, what that basically means is you're likely to see more shatters when you fire armor-piercing at heavily armoured battleships, but a lot less over-penetrations when you fire the armor-piercing at lightly armoured cruisers. Whether or not you think that's a good thing or a bad thing is, of course, entirely up to you. The penetration of the high explosive shells has been buffed from 63 to 95mm, and the final element in the Vanguard's buff package is to do with the damage repair party consumable. It can now restore 60% of normal damage, compared to the 50% that everybody else gets, and perhaps more significantly, it can also repair 33% of citadel damage, which is more than 3 times as much as the base 10% that other damage repair parties can handle. It's almost as if they're expecting this ship to take more than its fair share of citadel damage. Anyway, those are the buffs currently on the test server for the Wichita and the Vanguard. And now, it's on with today's main event. This is CaptainStevieX in the Tier 8 British light cruiser HMS Edinburgh. He's in a 3-cruiser division with his clanmates, Zoreth and Squid 222 in the Cleveland and Admiral Hipper respectively. It's a top-tier cruiser division. And while I am quite a fan of HMS Edinburgh, I can't really say the same thing about the back-to-school camo pattern that he's chosen to wear for this particular battle. I mean, it looks like a school bus. It's, I suppose that was kind of the point. It is the back-to-school camo after all. But I can't help I just can't help but feel that it looks as if somebody applied the primer and then forgot about the undercoat and the top coat. Anyway, it's not a beauty contest, doesn't matter. And I do like the Edinburgh. It's a very good Tier 8 cruiser. I don't think that the Town class Edinburgh at Tier 8 is as good as the Crown Colony class Fiji at Tier 7, but, well, that doesn't mean that the Edinburgh's bad, it just means that the Fiji is very, very good. And also it's a factor of the difference in the matchmaking, of course. You don't see you don't see any Tier 10s in the Fiji. And the Fiji also gets to shoot at certain other things that the Edinburgh is never going to get to shoot at. Tier 5 cruisers. Tier 5 cruisers in particular mostly appear to be made entirely out of citadels, so there's a potential to get some obscene amount of damage farming in on the Fiji that you're never really going to enjoy on the Edinburgh. None of that, of course, means that the Edinburgh is a bad ship. One clear advantage that the Edinburgh does have over the Fiji is an enhanced version of the damage repair consumable. It basically heals more faster than any other British cruiser. It's not quite up to the ridiculously overpowered standards of the heal enjoyed by the Lion, the Conqueror and the Nelson, but it's better than the heal on any other British cruiser, and only the Edinburgh gets it for some reason. Now, one thing that you do want when you're in the Edinburgh, or any other British light cruiser, is somebody else doing the spotting for you, so you can lurk behind the island or hide inside your smoke screen and put your guns to work without risk of being spotted and without risk of getting shot at. Stevie's going to get none of that in this game. In fact, I don't think it would be too harsh at all to say that most of the destroyers, not all, but most of the destroyers on Stevie's team were not a lot used to the team alive. Shiratsuyu up ahead isn't contesting the cap. There is definitely one enemy destroyer in the cap, although under the circumstances he would probably have died very quickly if he had gone into the cap to contest. There's a gallant in the cap, and that's an Akatsuki. And the Akatsuki is shooting at him, and of course he's spotted, so pretty much everything else, including the enemy Bismarck, are now also shooting at him. He's dumped his torpedoes into the cap, but they're not going to hit the gallant because the gallant isn't dumb enough to sit in a place in the cap circle where he could be torpedoed. Bear in mind, when I say that most of the destroyers on his team were not much used to his team alive, it's not necessarily their fault. That Shiratsuyu up ahead, he's just lost more than half of his health, so he's probably very wisely deciding to beat a hasty retreat and is falling back to behind the friendly cruisers. But what exact use is a Shiratsuyu going to be to the team behind friendly cruisers? He can't cap anything from back there. He can't, or shouldn't, torpedo anything from back there because he's got friendly cruisers in front of him, and he's definitely not going to spot anything from back there. So while the enemy team didn't manage to kill that Shiratsuyu, they have rendered him almost 100% combat ineffective. And so Captain Stevie, with the assistance of that Bismarck, is about to demonstrate what happens to British light cruisers, regardless of what tier they are, when they find themselves at the front of the pack because the destroyers on their team have turned tail and run for home as fast as the little turbines will take them. And yes, that was quite a lot of damage, wasn't it? On the other hand, you can see just how effective the Edinburgh's heal is. He's not quite printing himself a new ship, but it's not far off either. It doesn't just heal a lot, it heals very, very quickly. Now, despite the colossal spanking that he just received at the hands of that Bismarck, a casual look at the number of ships remaining might lead you to believe that things weren't actually going too badly for the team as a whole. The problem, of course, is that the enemy team controlled 2 caps, Captain Stevie's team only controls 1, and the enemy team is about to cap a 3rd, and they have killed one of his team's destroyers. They're fighting his team to a standstill on this side of the map, and they're utterly crushing his team on the other side of the map. So if anything's going to happen, it's going to have to happen on this side. Now that Massachusetts is a very, very scary proposition for anybody in a destroyer. I mean, it's a nice big inviting target, and he is going to eat some torpedoes, but that thing is basically built out of secondaries. And I have to say, it's nice to see a battleship taking the initiative. Okay, he ate a lot of torpedoes for his trouble, but it's still nice to see a battleship taking the initiative. Yes, I know that Massachusetts captains typically run with secondary builds and so like to get up close to the action, but if he had to pick one battleship on the team to have on this side of the map, the Massachusetts would definitely be it. In other news, Captain Stevie's team are now down to 1 destroyer. There's a USS Kidd on the other side of the map. 3 of the destroyers have been sunk, and they don't really appear to have achieved anything. Meanwhile, the enemy gallant has been spotted still lurking inside the cap circle. Naturally, he's smoked up, and unfortunately, this Edinburgh doesn't come equipped with radar. Of course, just because Captain Stevie's Edinburgh doesn't have radar, that doesn't mean that the Cleveland that he's divisioned up with doesn't have radar. He very probably does. Probably the only reason he's not used it is because it's on cooldown. More torpedoes from the gallant. The Massachusetts has managed to avoid them. And if that gallant has any sense whatsoever, he's already running rather than hanging around and waiting for the inevitable. And I'm pretty sure the Cleveland radar just went off, and the gallant has left it far too late. He blew his chance to sink the Massachusetts, and with the Massachusetts and an Edinburgh in shooting range, there is just no way the gallant is going to survive this unless he can somehow stay alive long enough for the Cleveland's radar to expire. There is no way he's getting out of this intact. And I think Captain Stevie is reasonably confident that they're going to be able to finish off that gallant, because he switches his fire momentarily to that broadsiding Cleveland, who is looking like a very, very juicy target. Unloads a couple of salvos. Yep, got him. Returns his attention to the gallant, but it's the Massachusetts that takes the kill. And they're now capping uncontested at last. And that pretty much just leaves the Bismarck as the last remaining enemy ship on this side of the map. Unfortunately for that Bismarck, he's just run out of friends, and while it looked like the Cleveland had the right idea when it was attempting to bung out before the inevitable happened, the Bismarck, on the other hand, if he wants to run away, well, he's facing in the wrong direction for one thing. He's going to have to turn the ship around first. And well, if I was in that Bismarck situation, I'd just want to be doing as much damage as possible to the enemy team before meeting my inevitable demise. With the number of ships shooting at him and the position that he's in, he can't expect to make it out of here alive. So all he really should be doing at this point is trying to minimise the damage that he takes, which is not that difficult to do in a Bismarck. It is a very tough ship, while at the same time maximising the amount of damage that he's doing, just in order to buy the rest of his team some time. He's got 5 ships shooting at him. He's never going to survive. So he just wants to be a thorn in the side of Captain Stevie's team for as long as he possibly can, because they pretty much have to deal with the Bismarck. They can't just leave that guy behind them while they go chasing after the rest of the Bismarck's team. And the longer the Bismarck can remain a thorn in their side, then the more benefit he's actually providing for his teammates, not just by damaging enemy ships over here, but by giving them more time to finish mopping up on the other side of the map, which they have all but done, and then redeploy to face the survivors of Captain StevieX's team over here. Bismarck didn't last as long as I hoped he might have, but, well, even if you're in a Bismarck, if you're getting shot at by 5 ships, you're not going to survive very long at all. So he did the best he could, and inflicted some damage as well, which means that the surviving ships on Captain Stevie's team now have to face, without any destroyers of their own, yep, the last destroyer on the team died. The USS Kidd has also been sunk, and Captain Stevie's team, in various degrees of disrepair, now have to deal with a victorious enemy team charging towards them from the western end of the map. An enemy team which still has 2 destroyers, although they have just lost another ship. But it's that destroyer advantage which often proves crucial, because we've already seen what happens when a light cruiser like the Edinburgh is forced to do its own spotting. Captain Stevie, however, is not going to have to deal with any enemy destroyers, at least not at first. First, the enemy Cleveland. Now, the Cleveland captain does make a fairly common mistake that most cruiser captains do when they're confronted with a British light cruiser. He had the high explosive loaded. He thinks British light cruiser, switches to armour piercing. The thing is, it may be a light cruiser, but the Edinburgh can bow tank 152mm armour piercing just as well as any other cruiser. The Cleveland captain does realise his mistake, however, switches back to the high explosive. The problem for this guy, well, it's not just Captain Stevie here. He is not given a full broadside here, but he's given enough of a broadside that Captain Stevie's semi-armour piercing is able to score more damage than that guy can safely handle. He is, of course, doing this because he's getting caught in a crossfire here, so he can't angle against every threat. And that allows Stevie to finally get some citadels in and finish off the Cleveland, picking up the Confederate reward into the bargain. Most importantly, however, with the Cleveland dead, he's no longer being spotted. And that's probably telling him a thing or two about the likely positions of the two remaining enemy destroyers. Now there's just less than 10 minutes of this game to go. Stevie's team still only hold one cap, but oh hey look, there's a very convenient capture circle right there. And there's still plenty of time left in this battle for the points to be the deciding factor, rather than the number of kills. So if you can secure a capture point, and you have absolutely nothing better to do, secure those capture points, particularly when the enemy team have more of them than you do. And so that's exactly what he's doing. Keeping his eye, in the meantime, in the likely direction of the enemy threat. And that's a very, very handy looking island over there that he can use to shield himself from being spotted by any pesky enemy destroyers that may be rushing south to interfere with the cap. It's all gone very quiet. It's been a while since anybody sunk anything. Oh, a couple of enemy ships just got spotted. Nice and safely out of range. Would be very, very useful to know where those two enemy destroyers were, of course. Cap is almost complete. As soon as he's capped, he'll be able to start firing without risking getting hit and decapped. Capture complete. And yet he doesn't start shooting at the Queen Elizabeth. And he would probably be able to do a fair amount of damage to the Queen Elizabeth at that kind of angle. But he holds his fire, probably thinking, well, I'm in open water, I need to get into some island cover before I start shooting. But his hand appears to get forced by the Massachusetts up there, who's charging straight in. And, well, the Massachusetts has been a pretty good teammate up till now. We really do need to support him. So he opens fire regardless, counting on the probability that the Queen Elizabeth is going to have his guns pointing towards the Massachusetts. Unfortunately for the Massachusetts, he was being spotted the entire time by one of the two surviving enemy destroyers, the Z-39, who managed to sink him with torpedoes. So, yeah. They've lost their last battleship. The Queen Elizabeth is incredibly vulnerable in this position, of course, caught in a crossfire, and it's going to be, well, from this angle, Captain Stevie who's probably going to be doing the most damage to it. So they're still way behind on points, and even with two caps under their control, they're not gaining points any faster than the enemy team are, unless they start sinking enemy ships, and they should be able to nail this Queen Elizabeth. But they're also going to have to start flipping more cap circles. And that's not going to be easy when the enemy team still have two destroyers. On the bright side, they do have the advantage of radar, which means that Zoreth over there in the Cleveland had best do his damnedest to keep his ass alive. Easier said than done when you're on that kind of low health. Oh, hold on, newsflash, the Kagero has just been spotted, and he's within shooting range of a Cleveland and a Megami, and the Z-39 has also been spotted by Squid up there to the northeast in the Hipper. But with 3/4 of the team occupied by two enemy destroyers, Captain Stevie continues raining 152mm semi-armor piercing shells down on the Queen Elizabeth. Because the team need the points, they have to get a kill. Done. And the surviving Megami has also managed to take out the Kagero. So they are still behind on points, but not nearly as badly as they were before. Squid 222 up there to the northeast, still trying to finish off that pesky Z-39 as Captain Stevie runs away in an effort to become undetected and survive the onslaught from the surviving enemy battleship and cruiser. Oh, Squid and the Hipper up to the north just landed a big hit in the Z-39, but it wasn't enough, and the Z-39's torpedoes have taken out Squid 222 in the Hipper. And he didn't kill the Z-39, so he's still up there somewhere. Now, there are actually a couple of bright sides here. The Z-39 is largely out of position, and he's obviously going to want to be heading in this direction to assist his teammates as quickly as possible. However, Squid 222 did manage to get his spotter plane up before he died. Well done to him. And that spotter plane is, intermittently at least, keeping the Z-39 spotted. So that Z-39 captain is going to have to plan his approach around the fact that he doesn't want to get spotted by that aircraft. On the not so bright side, while being intermittently spotted, that Z-39 is also capping, and given the points differences between the two teams, you're definitely going to want to stop that. As well as the fact that he's a nice fat juicy one-shot kill, if you can hit him. Against that, you have the fact that over on the other side of the map, we've got a very low health Cleveland and a Megami fighting a full health Duke of York, and a mostly full health Admiral Hipper. And that Admiral Hipper is providing a very, very juicy target at the moment. Captain Stevie takes the shot. Okay, this is telling the Z-39 exactly where he is and which way he's heading, but he has his hydro, so he shouldn't have to worry about getting torpedoed by the Z-39. And, well, he's probably not going to get close enough to be able to do anything to prevent the cap. But he can at least assist the team by inflicting some damage, not nearly as much as we would have hoped given the broadside target that the Hipper was actually giving him, but doing some damage to the Hipper while closing in and attempting to find and sink that Z-39 and flip this cap back. And straight away we know that the Z-39 has committed a terminal error of judgment, because this is an Edinburgh and it has hydro and he's hunting a destroyer, so obviously he's going to be using it, and there was next to no chance that Z-39 was ever going to be able to get off a successful torpedo attack. The fact that he stuck around and tried means that he's just sealed his fate. And that thing is pretty quick, but it isn't quite quick enough. Oh, you've got to be kidding. 1 over penetration. No, this is fine. This is fine. He's got the Z-39. No problem. That's the good news. Oh, and he's also flipping the cap. But that's the only good news, because he's now the last ship left alive on his team, against a Duke of York and a Hipper. And they know exactly where he is, not just because the Z-39 spotted him, but because, well, he's obviously flipping the cap. So, just to sum up the situation for you, at this point, with around 3 minutes of the game remaining, the enemy team are going to win on points in 1.5 minutes. All they have to do for a win is nothing. Captain Stevie, on the other hand, if he wants to win, he has to find and sink a Duke of York and a Hipper. And that should be next to impossible, because he's on one side of the map, and the last we knew, they were both on the other side of the map. Unless they're coming for him, there's no way he can win this game. And why would they come for him? They just have to stay alive for another minute and they've won on points. And even if there was enough time, which there isn't, but let's just for the sake of argument say there was still 10 minutes of this game remaining. He's got 11,000 health. He's going to have to find and sink a Duke of York and a Hipper. And all they have to do is exactly nothing. And they only have to do nothing for about another 30 seconds and they've won. So naturally, it comes as absolutely no surprise to anybody that these two idiots are risking throwing away a guaranteed win just in order to get one more kill. Captain Stevie immediately targets the Hipper. He has the lowest health. He needs to reduce the number of guns shooting back at him. The Hipper, however, has some fairly big guns of his own, and that was a very, very nasty chunk of health that he just tore out of him. But those are the last shots the Hipper's going to get off. I'm just going to pause the action here for our obligatory celebration. But with a kill on the Hipper, Stevie's just bought himself another minute to win this game. That's the good news. The bad news is that he has 10,000 health, and that's a 40,000 health Duke of York. Stevie's crew go to brown alert. Instinct kicks in. He triggers his smoke, but I think he very, very quickly realises that, well, if you smoke up, you can't see the Duke of York. And that's a 40,000 health battleship. So instead he guns the engines, and he's closing into torpedo range. The Duke of York is firing... he's firing armour piercing. But you only have 14-inch guns. You can't overmatch the bows of the Edinburgh with 14-inch guns. Why aren't you firing high explosive? There it is, and he very, very nearly does it. I mean, I don't know why he didn't have high explosive loaded in the first place, particularly because he's a British battleship, but, well, he didn't. And he nearly kills him. But the thing about nearly killing somebody, that's just a kind of polite way of saying you didn't kill somebody. And so that is the high caliber to go with the Kraken Unleashed and the Confederate Award. 6 kills and 143,000 damage. Last man standing against 2 enemy ships, who, if they'd only been smart enough to do nothing, would have won this game a minute ago. And on that bombshell, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're all having a great weekend. And as always, take care. And I'll catch you next time.